You are a disgrace. Go back to Africa and take your lawsuit with you. Judge Harold Whitaker bellowed. Maya Williams winced. Your Honor, please, Maya pleaded, her voice quivering. I am not attempting to disrespect the court. Whitaker leaned forward, his black judicial robe cascading over the bench like a dark shroud. Not attempting to disrespect the court. You enter this nation unlawfully, get apprehended without proper documentation, and then you possess the audacity to file a lawsuit against my court? I did not enter unlawfully. Do not perpetrate a falsehood upon me. I am not fabricating this. My paperwork was legitimate. I had a pending application for legal residency. I possessed receipts, duplicates, and case identification numbers. They were dispatched here. Whitaker emitted a hollow chuckle. How convenient. Everyone appears to possess documentation until the precise moment we request to examine it. My file vanished after it arrived at this establishment. A ripple of murmurs coursed through the assembled individuals. Whitaker struck the gavel with his palm beside him. Silence. The courtroom complied. Maya swallowed. Your Honor, I was taken into custody after my documents went missing. I was detained for the duration of the night. I was informed that if I signed for voluntary departure, this entire situation would be considerably simpler. I declined because I am not subject to deportation. You declined because someone instructed you on how to play the role of a victim. No, sir. I declined because I am blameless. Blameless, Whitaker echoed. This is not a criminal proceeding. Then why am I being subjected to treatment as if I were a perpetrator? The words escaped her lips before she could retract them. Even Deputy Voss shifted his weight beside her. Whitaker's gaze narrowed. What precisely did you utter? Maya's hands trembled against the table. I stated, if this is not a criminal matter, then why was I confined to an unheated cell for the entire night? Why were my documents confiscated? Why was I denied the opportunity to make a telephone call? Why was I informed that individuals who initiate legal action against your court do not remain for extended periods? At the adjacent table, Elena Morales lifted her head. Your Honor, if the respondent is asserting allegations of duress and the disappearance of lawful status documentation, the court ought to appoint legal counsel and ensure the preservation of all intake records. Whitaker struck the gavel forcefully. Be seated, Miss Morales. Elena remained on her feet. For the official record, you are precisely one statement away from being held in contempt. Elena sat down, but her gaze remained fixed on Maya. Whitaker redirected his attention to the woman before him. Do you comprehend the nature of your actions? You individuals arrive here, present baseless accusations, squander governmental resources, and then solicit pity. Maya blinked rapidly. I am merely requesting the recovery of my file. You are attempting to humiliate this court. I am requesting not to be deported due to an error committed by your office. My office does not commit errors. Then someone intentionally caused my file to vanish. The silence was immediate. A younger agent whispered. She elicited a response. Cole remained motionless. Maintain communication. Back within the courtroom, Whitaker deliberately reached for the disposable paper cup situated beside his bench. It contained half its volume of dark coffee. He raised it, took a measured sip, and looked down at Maya as if she were an unwelcome intrusion from the streets. Miss Williams, he declared, I have encountered countless individuals like yourself. Maya's voice softened. No, sir, you have not. You believe you are unique? No. You imagine that initiating a lawsuit instills fear in me? No. And what precisely do you anticipate will transpire here? Maya observed her own shaking hands, then looked back up. I believe the truth still resides somewhere within this building. Whitaker's countenance hardened, then With deliberate slowness, he tipped the paper cup over the edge of the bench. Coffee splashed onto the floor in front of Maya. The dark liquid spread across the polished wood, emitting a faint steam beneath the illumination of the lights. A collective gasp arose from the spectators. Whitaker gestured towards the spilled liquid. There, since you are so concerned with what belongs in this court, make yourself useful. Maya stared at the coffee. Your Honor, she whispered. You heard my directive? His voice became colder. Remove that coat and clean it. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping audibly against the floor. Objection! That is demeaning and entirely inappropriate. Whitaker did not acknowledge her. Be seated, Miss Morales. You cannot issue commands to a respondent.
I stated, be seated. Maya's breathing grew shallow. Her hand moved to the front of her brown coat, beneath the worn fabric, where something was concealed within the lining. The recording apparatus continued its operation. Whitaker's lips curled into a sneer.
What is the matter, Miss Williams? Too proud to clean? I had assumed that was why individuals like you journeyed here, to undertake the menial labor that actual citizens are too occupied to perform.
The courtroom remained frozen. Maya's fingers tightened around the coat button. She could discern Cole's voice through the minuscule receiver concealed beneath her collar, low and insistent. Maya, hold your position. We have secured the evidence. Do not jeopardize the operation unless absolutely necessary. Her eyes glistened. She lowered her hands from her coat without removing it. I will not comply with that directive, Your Honor. Whitaker leaned forward.
You will adhere to this court's authority. I will adhere to lawful directives. His face flushed crimson. Deputy Voss. Voss stepped closer. Yes, Your Honor. Remove her coat. Elena exclaimed, Your Honor, this constitutes an act of abuse. Whitaker slammed the gavel. Warning for contempt, Miss Morales. Voss reached for Maya's sleeve. Maya stepped back. Please do not touch me. Whitaker roared. I commanded you to remove her. Voss seized Maya by the arm and yanked forcefully. She lost her balance. Her hip struck the leg of the respondent's table, and before she could regain her composure, her right side impacted the sharp wooden edge of the jury enclosure. The dull thud reverberated through the front section of the courtroom. Maya bent forward, one hand flying to her ribs. The pain stole the very breath from her chest. She did not collapse, but for a fleeting moment, her knees buckled. Elena surged forward half a step. He has injured her. She requires medical attention. She must comply. Whitaker snapped. Maya forced air back into her lungs. Your Honor, I implore you, your file is gone, Whitaker stated. And soon, so shall you be. The words lingered in the air like a wisp of smoke. Voss tightened his grip, exhibiting greater caution now that every eye was fixed upon him. Maya straightened slowly, suppressing the pain. He pulled her away from the table. As she passed Elena, the lawyer leaned in and whispered, Do not sign anything. For an instant, the apprehension in Maya's eyes cleared. Something colder and more resolute emerged beneath it. I had no intention of doing so, Maya murmured. The side door swung open. The deputies dragged her toward the basement holding area. Judge Whitaker observed her departure, a sense of satisfaction evident. To him, she represented another frightened woman of color who had dared to challenge the wrong individual. He remained unaware that the clandestine recording device concealed within her coat had captured every utterance. He did not know that the Federal Bureau of Investigation was monitoring the situation from the van parked outside. And he certainly did not comprehend that the woman he had just ordered into the basement had not come to implore for justice. She had arrived to apprehend him as he was burying it. The side door clicked shut behind Maya Williams with a heavy metallic sound, severing her connection to the courtroom, the hushed whispers, and Judge Whitaker's self-satisfied silence. Deputy Voss maintained his firm grip on her upper arm as he marched her down a narrow service corridor. The pain in Maya's ribs throbbed with each step. She kept one hand lightly pressed against her side, careful not to betray the extent of the injury inflicted by the wooden edge. Her coat hung askew on her shoulders. One sleeve was stretched from where Voss had grasped it. Behind them, another deputy followed without uttering a word. Maya's breathing seemed amplified in the deserted hallway compared to its volume within the courtroom. "You did not need to manhandle me in that fashion," she remarked, keeping her voice subdued. Voss did not decelerate. "You did not need to engage in verbal confrontation with a federal judge. I requested my file. You have accused the incorrect individual. I accused the department that misplaced it." Voss halted so abruptly that Maya nearly collided with him. He turned, his face close enough for her to detect the aroma of coffee on his breath. "Listen to me very carefully," he stated, "down here. No one is concerned with what you believe you submitted. No one is concerned with the rights you presume to possess. You had your opportunity upstairs." Maya swallowed. "I wish to speak with an attorney." Voss offered a smile devoid of warmth. "Everyone desires something." He pushed open a gray steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only" and led her into the holding level situated beneath the courthouse. The atmosphere changed instantly. The area upstairs had carried the scent of aged wood, paper, perfume, and coffee. Down here, the prevailing odors were of bleach, damp concrete, and fear. The hallway was lined with beige cinder block walls. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A security camera was positioned to face the elevator, but Maya observed that the red recording indicator was extinguished. A uniformed county employee sat behind a scratched plexiglass partition, consuming a sausage biscuit from a paper wrapper. He barely glanced up. "Whitaker sent her back," the man inquired. "Identity verification," Voss responded. The man scoffed. "Is that what we are labeling it today?" Maya lowered her gaze, but each word imprinted itself upon her memory. Voss guided her into a processing room containing a metal table secured to the floor. A woman in a dark blazer awaited them, holding a clipboard. Her name tag read Nora Pike. She had neatly styled blonde hair, reading glasses suspended on a chain, and the weary demeanor of someone who had learned to perform cruel actions with an ordinary tone of voice. Nora assessed Maya. "This is the individual suing the court." Voss released Maya's arm with a shove. "That's her." Maya caught herself against the table, wincing as pain radiated through her side. Nora noticed. "A problem?" "He slammed me into the railing," Maya stated. Voss chuckled. She stumbled. "I require medical attention." Nora placed the clipboard down. "You need to cooperate. I need my file." Nora's eyes chilled. "You persist in uttering that because it is real." "No, Miss Williams, it does not exist." Nora opened a folder and turned it so Maya could see the uppermost page. "According to the system, you failed to establish lawful presence. That is because the documents are missing or because they never existed." Maya's hands trembled deliberately now, just enough to be noticeable. "They confiscated my belongings at intake. The duplicates were inside." Nora scribbled something on the clipboard. "Subject remains combative." "I am not combative. I am requesting my documents." Voss leaned against the wall. "It's the same thing down here." Nora withdrew a second packet from beneath the folder and placed it on the table. "This is a voluntary departure agreement. Sign it, and this will become simpler." Maya examined the packet. "I will not sign something I have not read. You may read it. I require legal counsel." "You are not facing criminal charges. Then why am I being held in the basement?" Nora paused. It was brief, but Maya observed it. So did the microphone concealed in the seam of her coat. Outside, in the surveillance van, Raymond Cole listened, his jaw clenched. The audio transmission came through with a faint hiss, but was sufficiently clear. Beside him, Agent Lewis typed notes in real time.
Call stated, tag that, denial of counsel request, basement holding, Pike present. Lewis nodded. Tagged. Back in the processing room, Nora slid a pen across the table. Sign. Maya shook her head. No. Voss pushed away from the wall. Are you certain about that? Yes. You believe that trivial complaint upstairs protects you? He inquired. Maya's voice trembled. I believe the law protects me. Voss laughed again, lower this time. The law is upstairs. You are downstairs. Nora cast him a warning glance, not out of disagreement, but because he had divulged too much. Maya pressed one hand against her ribs. Please, I need to make a phone call. Who? Nora inquired. My cousin's name. Maya hesitated, as if apprehensive. Angela's number. My phone was in my bag. Nora clicked her pen. Convenient. Maya looked from Nora to Voss. Are you going to permit me to call or not? Nora closed the folder. Not until your identity is confirmed. My identity was confirmed when I was apprehended. Not to Judge Whittaker's satisfaction.
And if it is never confirmed, Voss stepped close again. Then you will be transferred. Transferred where? Neither of them responded. The silence conveyed more to Maya than any confession could have. Nora gathered the papers, then leaned down until her voice was almost gentle. Miss Williams, I am going to offer you counsel that you should have heeded before embarrassing yourself upstairs. Cease your resistance. Individuals who contend with Judge Whittaker do not remain within the system for extended periods. Maya looked at her. What does that signify? Nora's expression became guarded. It signifies that you should sign the document. I will not, Voss muttered. Then mark her as private. Nora's eyes snapped towards him. Carl, he shrugged. What? That is the direction this is heading. Maya lowered her head, concealing the sudden composure that settled upon her face. Private. That was the term they required. In the van, Agent Lewis froze over his keyboard.
Cole raised one finger. No one speaks.
The room fell silent, save for the audio feed. Maya whispered, What does private signify? Nora collected the packet swiftly. A transfer classification. To where? To wherever the court mandates. Does that signify deportation? Nora smiled faintly. Not precisely. Maya allowed fear to permeate her voice. Please, I do not comprehend. Voss stepped around the table and dislodged her chair with his boot. You do not need to comprehend. Sit. Maya sat down cautiously, her ribs burning. Voss fastened one cuff around her right wrist and attached it to a metal ring on the table. Why are you doing this? She inquired. Because you refuse to sign. Nora turned towards the door. Leave her here for a while. Perhaps the cold will aid her in her contemplation. The processing room door opened to a smaller holding cell. No window, a single metal bench, a camera in the corner with no visible recording light. A vent expelling air far too cold for the season. Voss unlocked the cuff from the table and pushed Maya inside. She stumbled, but remained upright. I am injured, she stated. Then sit down, Voss replied. The door shut. Maya stood in the confined cell, arms clasped around herself, breathing through the pain. For the first time since entering the courthouse, she permitted her expression to alter. The trembling subsided. Her eyes became clear. In her ear, Raymond Cole's voice sounded softly. Maya, you have it. Private transfer. Pike and Voss, both officially recorded. We can extract you. Maya looked towards the deactivated camera in the corner. Not yet, she thought. Aloud for the microphone, she whispered as if a frightened woman talking to herself. My file was genuine. Someone made it vanish. Cole understood the unspoken reply and closed his eyes for a brief moment. In the hallway outside, Nora's voice returned, muffled but close. The judge wishes her returned upstairs in the morning. If she still refuses to sign, he will authorize immediate transfer. Voss responded. Private channel, Nora stated. That is what he informed Chambers. Maya sat down slowly on the metal bench, the cold seeping through her clothing. The pain in her side was real. The danger was real. The animosity encountered upstairs was real. But now, the snare possessed teeth, and by morning, Judge Harold Whittaker would find himself further ensnared. If you believe Maya deserves justice, take a moment to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, because someone near your city might be listening to this story with you right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this fight for justice. By morning, Maya Williams could no longer discern whether the chill in her bones originated from the holding cell or from the knowledge of how many individuals had occupied that same basement before her and never returned to a courtroom. A deputy opened the steel door shortly after 7 o'clock. The hallway light cut across her face. On your feet, Voss commanded. Maya rose slowly from the metal bench. Her ribs screamed as she straightened, but she kept one hand close to her side, making the pain appear as fear. Her brown coat was wrinkled from the night. One sleeve was stretched, the front still faintly damp where cold air had settled into the fabric. I require medical attention, she stated. Voss stepped inside. You need to learn when to cease speaking. Nora Pike appeared behind him, holding the same clipboard from the previous night. Her hair was neat, her lipstick was fresh. She looked as though she had slept well. Judge Whittaker wants you upstairs, Nora declared. Did you find my file? Nora's eyes remained impassive. There is no file. There once was. Then you should have maintained better oversight of it. Maya looked at her for a long second. Someone in this building caused it to disappear. Voss grabbed her arm before Nora could respond. Move. He marched her down the corridor, past the processing room, past the plexiglass partition where the same guard was now drinking coffee from a foam cup. The guard glanced up and gave Voss a knowing look. She's still resisting? Voss smirked. The judge is about to rectify that. Maya lowered her head. The recorder in her coat seam captured every word. In a utility van parked beneath the live oak tree, Raymond Cole stood with his headset on, dark circles beneath his eyes. He had not gone home. Neither had the rest of the team. Empty coffee cups were scattered beside laptops and audio receivers. A box of untouched donuts rested on the floor. Agent Lewis adjusted the feed. They're escorting her upstairs. Cole checked his watch. The courtroom audio should pick up when she crosses the threshold. Keep the Warren team 2 minutes out. Are we extracting her the moment he orders the transfer? Cole stared at the monitor. We extract her when he says enough to irrevocably incriminate himself. The courtroom was already thronging with people when Maya was brought back through the side door. Word had circulated throughout the building that the woman who had sued Judge Whittaker had been held in the basement overnight. People turned to observe her, then quickly averted their gaze as Voss tightened his grip. Elena Morales was present, standing beside the public defender's table with a legal pad in her hands. Her eyes immediately went to Maya's side. You are injured, Elena stated. Voss shoved Maya toward the respondent's table. Sit down, counselor. I was not addressing you. Voss stepped towards Elena, but the clerk announced, All rise. Judge Harold Whittaker entered through the rear door behind the bench. His robe was impeccably arranged. His silver hair was smoothly combed. He appeared rested, composed, and almost pleased. Everyone sat except Maya.
Voss kept one hand on her arm. Whitaker looked down at her.
Miss Williams, I granted you the night to reconsider your conduct. Maya's voice emerged faintly. I have reconsidered nothing, Your Honor. A few individuals shifted in their seats. Whitaker's mouth tightened. Did you sign the voluntary departure agreement? No. Do you intend to retract your baseless complaint against this court? No. Elena stood. Your Honor, I respectfully request that Miss Williams be appointed legal counsel immediately. She has alleged the disappearance of legal documentation, coercion, physical injury sustained within court custody, and denial of communication. Whitaker did not look at Elena. Denied. On what grounds? On the grounds that this court is not a platform for political spectacle. This is not spectacle. She sustained an injury in this courtroom yesterday. Whitaker turned his gaze towards Elena. Miss Morales, I have tolerated your interruptions for an excessive duration, and I have tolerated observing individuals disappear from this docket for an equally excessive duration. The room fell utterly silent. Whitaker's expression altered. Maya perceived it. Elena perceived it. Ruth Bennett, seated towards the rear with a court stenography folder in her lap, also perceived it. Ruth's hand tightened around her pen until her knuckles turned pale. Whitaker spoke deliberately. Choose your subsequent words with utmost caution, counselor. Elena hesitated, but she did not sit down. Maya addressed the judge. Your Honor, my file was legitimate. Your office misplaced it. I was subjected to pressure to sign removal papers. I was denied medical assistance after being injured under your directive. I am reiterating my request for the production of my records. Whitaker leaned back. There are no records. Then how did your office become aware of the instruction to mark me for private transfer?
The words struck the room like a spark igniting dry tinder.
Nora Pike, standing near the clerk's station, cast a sharp glance towards Whitaker. Whitaker's eyes flickered to her, then returned to Maya. Who informed you of that terminology? Maya allowed her hand to tremble against the table. Is it not a legal classification? Answer the question. I overheard it downstairs. Voss shifted beside her. Whitaker's voice dropped. Miss Williams, you are progressively becoming a problem. Maya swallowed. I merely seek that which the law affords me. The law grants this court the authority to remove individuals who have no legal right to remain in the United States. But you have not demonstrated that I possess no right. I am not obligated to prove the existence of something that does not exist. My file exists. Whitaker slammed the gavel. Your file is gone, because it was never real. Maya's gaze met his, her eyes glistening but unwavering. Then why is the prospect of its discovery so terrifying to you? For several long moments, the only sound filling the oppressive atmosphere was the low thrum of the courtroom's lighting. Inside the van, Agent Lewis's voice was a hushed murmur. That struck a nerve. Cole raised a hand, signaling for silence. Whitaker began to rise from his seat, his countenance flushing a deep crimson. Deputy Voss, escort her from these premises. Arrange for her immediate reassignment. Utilize a secure channel. No public record, no delays. Elena's voice boomed out. Your Honor, that action is unlawful. Whitaker pointed a finger at her. Contempt of court. Maya took a step back as Voss moved to apprehend her. Please, I implore you, grant me legal representation. Are your entreaties concluded? Whitaker retorted sharply. Voss forcibly pulled her away from the table. This time, Maya shifted just enough to prevent him from ripping the coat open prematurely. The maneuvers seemed to ignite his anger. He grasped the lapels and yanked with considerable force. The aged, faded brown garment slid off one shoulder. Something metallic dislodged itself from the ruptured interior lining. It dropped. Thud. The sound was small, crisp, and definitive. The object impacted the gleaming floor of the courtroom, pirouetted once beneath the artificial illumination, and came to a halt precisely at the base of the defendant's table. Every set of eyes gravitated towards it. A badge, a burnished gold and blue, substantial, genuine. Across its upper expanse, the inscription read, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Beneath that, Special Agent Maya Williams. Deputy Voss released his grip as if her coat had suddenly become scorching hot. Elena Morales instinctively covered her mouth. Ruth Bennett's writing implement slipped from her grasp. Nora Pike's complexion turned ashen. Judge Whittaker remained motionless. Maya stooped slowly, one hand still pressed against her injured ribs, and retrieved the badge. As she straightened, the apprehension had vanished entirely from her features. Her voice, now devoid of its earlier tremor, was remarkably calm. It needed no amplification. Special Agent Maya Williams, she declared. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The rear doors swung open. Raymond Cole entered first, accompanied by 6 federal agents clad in dark jackets bearing the FBI insignia. The courtroom erupted in a chorus of gasps, but Cole's voice cut through the din. Judge Harold Whittaker, this chamber is now under federal jurisdiction. No one is to depart. No one is to examine any document. No one is to delete any data. Whittaker's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the bench. This is preposterous. Maya looked up at him, the badge held steady in her palm. No, Judge Whittaker, she stated. What is preposterous is the duration for which you believed no one was privy to your actions. For the first time since Maya had entered his courtroom, Harold Whittaker found himself bereft of words. For 3 seconds following Maya's pronouncement, an absolute silence enveloped the courtroom. Then, the quiet shattered abruptly. Attendees gasped oddly. Someone in the rear rows began to weep. A man uttered under his breath, "My Lord God." Elena Morales remained frozen beside the public defender's station, one hand still covering her mouth. Deputy Voss retreated from Maya as if the badge she held had transformed into a loaded firearm. Raymond Cole proceeded down the aisle with the measured composure of a man accustomed to entering environments where the deceitful still harbored illusions of time. Federal agents, he announced. Everyone will remain seated. Whittaker finally regained his voice. This is my courtroom. Cole's gaze ascended to meet his. Not any longer. The judge's face contorted. You possess no authority to interfere with the proceedings of a federal immigration court. Maya slipped the badge into her hand, displaying it so all could see. Her ribs still throbbed, but she stood tall. Judge Whittaker, she stated. These proceedings became integral to an active federal inquiry the instant you mandated a private transfer outside standard public docket protocols. That is a fabrication. Raymond Cole turned to Agent Lewis. Secure the chambers. Secure all records. Isolate every terminal linked to this courtroom. Lewis, accompanied by 2 agents, moved with swift efficiency. One proceeded to the clerk's counter. Another advanced towards the side entrance leading to the judge's chambers. The third positioned himself between Nora Pike and the hallway. Nora's countenance had drained of color. I must contact court administration. Cole's reply was firm. No communication. Hands visible at all times. I am a court officer. You are a person of interest. Deputy Voss attempted to backtrack towards the side exit. Maya noticed him first. "Deputy Voss!" He halted. Her voice remained level. "You heard, Agent Cole. No one leaves." Voss stared at her, his lips pressed into a tight line. The previous day, he had dragged her into the basement. Now, he could barely meet her gaze. Whitaker struck the gavel once, but its sound lacked its usual resonance. It sounded feeble and desperate. "I will have every single one of you dismissed from federal service," he declared. Cole glanced at the gavel, then back at the judge. "You may lodge your complaint from detention, should it come to that." A murmur rippled through the room again. Maya turned towards the families seated in the gallery. Their faces conveyed a mixture of fear, bewilderment, and a fragile hope that was almost painful to witness. She understood they had anticipated judgments, postponements, perhaps deportation. They had not, however, anticipated the presence of the FBI. She spoke gently. "No one here is in any jeopardy for their attendance. Agents would record your particulars as witnesses. You will not be compelled to respond to any inquiries without legal counsel present." An elderly woman in the second row whispered, "Are they going to send us away?" Elena Morales stepped forward before Maya could respond. Her voice, though still unsteady, held a newfound firmness. "No, ma'am. Please remain seated. I will assist you." Maya looked at Elena. This was the first genuine moment between them, the pretense largely abandoned. Elena's eyes narrowed. "You were operating undercover?" "Yes." "And you allowed him to inflict harm upon you?" Maya's expression softened. "I needed him to vocalize his intentions when he believed himself to be beyond consequence." Elena's gaze shifted towards Whitaker, her features hardening. "Then you certainly obtained more than enough." "I sincerely hope so," Maya responded. "However, I doubt he constitutes the entirety of the operation." Cole approached the bench. "Judge Whitaker, step down." Whitaker stared at him. "Absolutely not." Cole nodded to two agents. "Then assist him." The agents advanced around the bench. Whitaker recoiled as if their proximity to his judicial robe offended him more deeply than the accusation itself. "Do not lay a hand on me." "Step down," Cole repeated slowly, his voice trembling with suppressed fury. Whitaker descended from the bench, stripped of his imposing stature and no longer casting the long shadow of his robe over everyone else. He appeared older, diminished, still potent, but no longer beyond reach. As one agent guided him towards the jury box, Maya's eyes were drawn to the coffee stain still drying on the polished wooden floor. The dark mark he had commanded her to clean using her coat. She glanced at it once, then looked away. Some indignities did not require immediate retribution. Some were best preserved as evidence. Agent Lewis returned from the clerk's station. "Cole," the tone of his voice suggested something was amiss. Cole turned. "What?" Lewis held up a small evidence bag containing a USB drive. The clerk attempted to conceal this. All attention shifted towards Nora Pike. Nora's voice quivered. "That is my personal property." Lewis stated it had been connected to the docket terminal. Cole looked at Maya. "Accompany him. Records room." Maya nodded and followed Lewis through the side door. Her ribs protested with each stride, but she pressed on. The corridor behind the chambers carried the scent of printer ink and aged carpeting. Family photographs adorned the walls outside the office doors. A framed poster proclaimed, "Justice demands order." Maya almost chuckled at the ironic cruelty of it. The records room was secured by a keypad entry. An FBI technician had already gained access and was meticulously photographing the space before any item was disturbed. Metal shelving units held boxes meticulously labeled by year. Filing cabinets lined the walls. A copier sat dormant, its screen in sleep mode. It appeared entirely ordinary, which was precisely what made it so disturbing. Lewis indicated a terminal in the corner. The system indicates your cover identity was updated at 6:12 this morning. Maya leaned in closer. The screen displayed her fabricated profile. Maya Williams, Liberian national. No verified lawful status. Removal recommended. Beneath this was a classification code she had never encountered within any legitimate immigration procedure. PTR9, Private Transfer Review. Maya's expression became impassive. Search that code. The technician entered the command. Initially, nothing occurred. Then, a list materialized. 12 names. Subsequently, as he expanded archived entries, the number rose to 37, then 64. Lewis whispered, "Jesus." Maya read the names sequentially. The majority were black. Many hail from West Africa, Haiti, Jamaica, the Caribbean, and black immigrant communities throughout the South. Some possessed pending legal claims. Some held documentation of lawful residency. Several listed U.S. citizen children as emergency contacts. All of them shared a singular final status notation: removed. Maya pointed to the travel confirmation column. "Open that." The technician clicked. No airline itinerary, no deportation flight number, no consular receipt, no arrival stamp from any designated country. Only vacant fields. "They didn't deport them," Lewis observed. Maya's voice was a low murmur. "They erased them." The technician opened another file. The identical pattern emerged. Another. The same. Yet another. A woman named Aho had been marked as removed 3 years prior, but her daughter had submitted 5 subsequent inquiries. All met with silence. A man named Samuel Okoro had been designated for removal 2 years ago following a 4-minute hearing presided over by Whitaker. No flight record, no receiving authority, no tangible proof of his departure from the United States. Maya lingered on Samuel's name longer than the others. Cole entered behind them. "Inform me." Lewis stepped back from the screen. "We have identified at least 64 dubious removals linked to a private transfer code." Cole's jaw tightened. "Dubious? How so?" Maya provided the explanation. Absence of transportation records, no confirmation of arrival, no public docket entries subsequent to Whitaker's directive. Cole's gaze swept across the shells. It could be a consequence of poor record-keeping. Maya turned to him. "Poor record-keeping doesn't make paper disappear. This lost individuals." For a moment, silence prevailed. Then, the technician frowned at another recovered field. "There is a note embedded within the deleted metadata." Cole moved closer. "Read it." The technician enlarged the text. "Black Orchard." Maya felt an icy chill permeate the room, colder even than the basement cell. Lewis inquired, "What is that? A geographical designation?" Maya surveyed the list of names, the blank travel records, the code that had nearly become her own personal erasure. "I am uncertain at this juncture," she replied. "However, whatever its nature, that is precisely where they were dispatched." Back in the courtroom, Whitaker sat under guard, finally rendered speechless. Upstairs, individuals were providing witness testimonies. Downstairs, the detention cells were undergoing forensic examination. In the records room, the initial concrete manifestation of the unfolding nightmare materialized on a government monitor. The system had not faltered by mere chance. Someone had engineered the files to vanish. By midday, the Savannah courthouse bore little resemblance to its former self. It now resembled a crime scene, albeit one adorned with marble and brass. Federal agents navigated the corridors, meticulously documenting evidence. Court employees sat in segregated rooms awaiting interviews. Every computer terminal within Judge Whittaker's chambers had been photographed, sealed, and disconnected from the network. The courtroom where he had vociferously berated Maya Williams was now deserted, save for the lingering coffee stain on the floor and a strip of yellow evidence tape cordoning off the aisle. Maya stood in a small medical bay on the ground floor while an FBI medic assessed her ribs. The contusion along her right side had already begun to darken. "You require X-rays?" the medic stated. "I require 20 minutes with a cyber team." "You require a hospital." Maya carefully pulled her shirt back down, concealing the injury beneath the worn brown coat. "If I begin coughing blood, you may resume your argument." The medic, a man with silver hair and reading glasses dangling from his collar, offered her the familiar look older gentlemen reserve for those they perceive as being willfully obstinate. He handed her 2 pain relievers and a paper cup of water. "At the very least, consume something," he advised. "You appear as though you've been subsisting on courthouse air." A few minutes later, Raymond Cole met her in the makeshift command center established within a disused conference room across from the clerk's office. He proffered a paper bag from a nearby diner. "Biscuit," he said. "Egg and cheese. No bacon." Maya looked at the bag. "You remembered." "I retain information that proves useful." She accepted it, though she made no move to open it immediately. The room buzzed with the glow of multiple screens, a tangled network of cables, hushed voices, and the persistent rhythm of agents striving to transmute horror into tangible evidence. Through the window, Savannah presented an almost serene tableau. Majestic live oaks, leisurely traffic, an elderly couple crossing the street, each cradling takeout coffee cups. The distant chime of a church bell sounded from somewhere beyond the courthouse square. Within the room, 64 names glowed on a monitor. Agent Lewis sat alongside a cyber specialist named Priya Nair. Priya possessed short, dark hair, eyes that conveyed an unsettling calm and an intensity of focus that compelled those around her to modulate their voices. She looked up as Maya entered. "We have successfully traced the phrase Black Orchard through fragmented deleted metadata, encrypted chat logs, and a relay server associated with 3 of the private transfer records." Cole closed the door. "What does it signify?" Priya hesitated, a pause that communicated more than any swift affirmation could have. "It appears to be an exclusive online marketplace," she stated, invitation only, operating within the dark web. It utilizes rotating mirror sites. Transactions are conducted via convoluted cryptocurrency wallets. Maya placed the biscuit bag down, untouched. "A marketplace for what?" Priya angled the screen slightly. "People." No one spoke for a moment. Priya continued, her voice remarkably steady, conveying a professionalism that was the only barrier against a complete breakdown. "They issue the term trafficking. They employ coded descriptors, coded listings, field unit, domestic placement, agricultural relocation, factory hand, unclaimed removal. The terminology is deliberately sanitized, but the associated data aligns precisely with missing persons from Whittaker's docket." Agent Lewis swallowed audibly. "They auctioned them. They listed them." Priya elaborated. "Buyers engaged through intermediaries. Some were dispatched to agricultural facilities, others to remote workshops, and a select few to private residences under fabricated labor agreements. The platform is designated as the Black Orchard Exchange." Maya's expression remained unchanged, yet an almost palpable tension tightened around her silence within the room. "They altered the nomenclature," she observed, "so as not to acknowledge the reality of slavery." Cole's jaw clenched. "Then we shall reinsert the accurate terminology into the official record." Priya navigated to a recovered listing. The majority of the page remained encrypted,
but portions had been successfully reconstructed. There were no explicit names, only codes, age ranges, health assessments, work capabilities, language proficiencies. No confirmed local connections. Paper trail terminated. Removal status final. Each phrase was more chilling than the last. Maya leaned closer. Paper trail terminated implies Whitaker's official approval. That is our current working hypothesis, Priya explained. His court facilitated the disappearances. An external entity managed the transportation. The marketplace handled the distribution. Lewis pointed to a specific line. PTR09 is evident in the export logs. The identical private transfer code. Maya read the entries. Her own cover identity was also present. Newly generated, designated as pending. For a fleeting instant, the room seemed to sway precariously. Had the badge not fallen, had Vos successfully removed the code in the basement, had Nora processed the documents just one step faster, Maya Williams would have become another listed individual, erased before nightfall. Cole perceived the shift on her face. "Maya," he said softly. She straightened. "I am quite well." "No, you are not." "I am useful." Cole's gaze held hers. He was compelled to order her away. She recognized this. He knew that she knew this. However, the names displayed on the screen offered no respite, no moment for comfort. Priya opened another recovered file. "There is one listing I believe you should examine. The code designated S217. Maya felt the initials resonate before she spoke them. Samuel Okoro. Priya nodded. Marked as removed from Whitaker's docket 2 years ago. Listed through Black Orchard 6 days later. Lewis accessed Samuel's court record on a secondary monitor. 61 years old, born in Nigeria. Lawful resident documentation pending renewal. Employed at a garage on the outskirts of Atlanta. Daughter listed as Grace Aoro. Cole looked at Maya. "Do we have any indication of his destination?" "Not presently," Priya responded. "The buyer field is encrypted, but there is a transport tag associated with Mississippi. A rural corridor. No precise address." Maya stared at Samuel's photograph. It was a standard government intake image, flat and poorly illuminated. Yet his eyes held a spark of life, weariness, pride, and bewilderment at the system that had consumed him. "Does his daughter have any knowledge?" Maya inquired. Lewis shook his head. According to the file, she submitted 5 inquiries. Each was met with the same impersonal language. Subject removed from United States jurisdiction. Maya averted her gaze from the screen, looking towards the window. An older black gentleman ambled across the courthouse lawn below, a folded newspaper tucked beneath his arm. For a brief, fleeting moment, she envisioned her own father, standing resplendent in his Sunday suit after church, imparting the wisdom that a nation's laws were only as honorable as the individuals courageous enough to uphold them. Cole lowered his voice. "We shall contact Grace with extreme caution." Maya nodded. No false hope. Priya's keyboard produced another series of clicks. There is more. Black Orchard has a scheduled transfer window commencing tomorrow evening. We cannot access the complete manifest, but at least 18 entries are currently active. 18 individuals, Lewis questioned. Priya's eyes remained fixed on the screen. At a minimum, Cole turned to the team. "I want warrants drafted, initiate financial tracing, and cross-reference every PTR09 case with missing persons reports, transportation logs, fuel purchase records, private airstrip data, agricultural property records, everything." Maya finally opened the paper bag and retrieved the biscuit. It had cooled to lukewarm, but she took a bite, acknowledging the medic's earlier observation.
She needed to retain her humanity long enough to contend with those who had forgotten its significance. Elena Morales appeared at the doorway, escorted by an agent. Her face was pallid. "I have provided my statement," she began. "You need to hear something." Cole nodded for her to enter. Elena's gaze fell upon the screen. Then she looked at Maya. "For years, families sought my counsel. They invariably recounted the same narrative. Their father, sister, husband, or mother was purportedly deported, yet no one ever heard from them again. I had presumed the system was merely negligent. Cruel, certainly, but negligent. Maya stated it was not negligence." Elena's eyes welled up. "There is a woman in Atlanta, Grace Socorro. She never ceased her inquiries. Every few months, she would present another letter, another photograph, another question that remained unanswered." Elena's voice cracked. "She once confided in me. My father always calls on Sundays. A man like that does not simply cease communication." Maya looked back at Samuel's image displayed on the screen. The case was no longer merely a code. It represented a daughter, a kitchen table, a telephone that rang every Sunday until it fell silent. Cole picked up his jacket. "We will go and see Grace." Maya reached for the old brown coat. Cole gently restrained her. "You are no longer obligated to wear that." Maya's gaze drifted down to the worn fabric, to the torn lining where the badge had been revealed, to the coffee stain near the hem. "Yes," she affirmed, "I must." Cole understood after a brief moment. The coat was evidence, but it had transcended its status as mere proof. It was now the embodiment of the woman Whitaker had intended to obliterate. Maya donned it carefully, wincing slightly at the pain in her ribs, and followed him out. Behind them, on the monitor, Black Orchid Exchange refreshed, obscured by layers of code, still concealed behind sterile language and clandestine finances. However, for the first time, someone had discovered the entrance, and Maya Williams was resolute in her intent to force it wide open. Grace Okoro resided in a modest brick dwelling on the southern expanse of Atlanta, the kind of home that appeared to have been sustained for years through diligent effort, heartfelt prayers on Sundays, and an unyielding love. A narrow porch was furnished with 2 white rocking chairs, a hanging fern whose fronds had begun to brown at the edges, and a small American flag precariously planted in a flower pot beside the steps. A silver sedan occupied the driveway. Wind chimes stirred gently near the door, despite the palpable absence of any breeze. Maya Williams stood at the base of the porch steps, Raymond Cole at her side. She was still clad in the brown coat. The torn lining had been meticulously pinned for evidence preservation, and every movement caused a tug against the bruise beneath her ribs. Cole regarded her. "Do you wish for me to conduct the conversation?" Maya's eyes remained fixed on the front door. "No." "Are you certain?" "She has been disregarded by individuals bearing badges for 2 years. She requires to hear it from someone who comprehends that experience." Cole offered no argument. Maya knocked for a moment. There was no response. Then, a curtain by the door shifted. A woman's voice, tinged with caution and weariness, called through the wood. "Who is it?" "Miss Okoro. My designation is Special Agent Maya Williams. I am affiliated with the FBI. This is Supervisory Special Agent Raymond Cole. We're here about your father, Samuel Okoro." The door unlocked almost instantly. Grace Okoro opened it, but only a crack. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, dressed in jeans and a navy cardigan, her expression guarded, like someone who had learned hope could be a painful illusion. Her gaze flicked from Maya's face to the badge Maya held out, then to Cole, and finally back to Maya's coat. "My father," Grace stated. "Yes, ma'am."
Maya confirmed. Grace didn't immediately invite them inside. Are you here to inform me he was deported? Because I have that letter. I have 6 copies of that letter. No, Maya replied gently. That is not why we are here. Something shifted in Grace's demeanor. It wasn't relief. Relief felt too precarious. It was the first visible fissure in a protective barrier she had erected, a defense against the constant disappointment no one else had shielded her from. Grace opened the door wider. Please, come in. The air inside carried a scent of lemon polish, coffee, and something warm baking. The living room was meticulously tidy, adorned with family photographs on the walls and a Bible resting open on a side table. A framed picture depicted Samuel Okoro standing beside Grace, seemingly at a college graduation, his arm around her shoulders, his smile radiating immense pride. Grace led them to the kitchen. A metal cookie tin sat on the table. She drew it closer before sitting down. This contains everything, she explained. Letters, case references, duplicates, names of individuals I contacted, dates I attended court. I preserved it all because everyone acted as if I were disoriented. Maya took a seat opposite her. Cole remained standing near the counter, affording them privacy. Grace opened the tin. Within lay folded correspondence, certified mail receipts, handwritten notes, and photographs. Some pages bore faint coffee stains. Others had corners softened from frequent handling. My father came to this country in 2004, Grace began. He worked at Crawford Auto Repair for nearly 17 years. He never missed a church service unless he was ill. He never missed my birthday. He never missed our Sunday call. She touched the topmost photograph without lifting it. Every Sunday after services, he called me. Even if he only had 2 minutes, he called. Maya listened attentively, offering no interruption. Then one day, they informed him there was an issue with his renewal documentation. He went to court. Judge Whitaker presided over the case. My father told me not to worry. He said, Grace, I have copies. I have receipts. He always kept copies. Her voice began to tremble. Then the court declared he had been removed from the United States. Cole's expression grew somber, but he remained silent. Grace looked at Maya. Removed, she echoed. That was the word, as if he were an item misplaced in the wrong room. Maya's fingers rested on the table. Was there any confirmation of his arrival in Nigeria? No, Grace confirmed. I contacted the consulate. I contacted immigration. I contacted airlines. I contacted churches back home. I reached out to cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Nobody saw him. Nobody heard from him. Grace swallowed. And my father always called on Sundays. A man like that doesn't simply cease calling unless someone stops him. The weight of her words settled into the quiet kitchen. Maya recalled the Black Orchard file. S217, the designation that had attempted to reduce a father to mere inventory. Miss Okoro, Maya said carefully, we have reason to believe your father may not have been placed on a deportation flight. Grace stared at her, bewildered. What does that signify? It suggests the official record might be inaccurate. Grace covered her mouth with her hand. She looked away, then back again, hesitant to grasp the full implication too quickly. Are you implying he might still be alive? Maya felt the gravity of her response. We do not know that for certain yet. Grace closed her eyes. I will not offer you a promise I cannot guarantee, Maya stated. However, we have uncovered evidence indicating your father's case was part of a broader criminal investigation. We suspect individuals listed as removed may have been illegally transferred instead. Grace stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Transferred where? We are actively working to identify the locations. No, Grace shook her head. Don't phrase it that way. Don't use official jargon.
Where did they take my father? Maya accepted Grace's anger, understanding she had earned it. We believe some victims were sold into forced labor. Grace gripped the back of her chair, her knuckles white. She seemed as though the room itself had shifted beneath her. Cole took a step forward. Miss Okoro. Grace raised a hand. Please, don't. He halted. Grace's gaze drifted to Maya's coat, then to the faint contusion near her wrist. Is that what happened to you? Maya paused before responding. I went undercover in Whitaker's court, she said. He attempted to designate me for the same type of transfer. Grace sank back into the chair. So you understand. You know what it feels like when they look at you and deem you insignificant. Maya's voice softened. Yes. Grace reached into the tin and retrieved a photograph. Samuel was pictured in front of a grill in someone's backyard, wearing an apron that proclaimed, King of the Cookout. On the reverse, written in blue ink, were words meant for Grace. So you remember, I always come home. Grace slid the photograph across the table. Take it, she urged. Maya looked at the image. Are you certain? If you find him, show him this. Tell him. Maya picked it up with both hands. I will. Grace leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. And if you don't find him alive? The kitchen fell into profound silence. Maya met her gaze directly. Then I will bring the truth home. Grace nodded slowly, tears now streaming down her face, but her expression had transformed. She was still fearful, still hurting, but no longer powerless. Cole's phone vibrated. He moved to the hallway, answered, listened, and returned with a look Maya recognized. What is it? Maya inquired. Priya has put transport data connected to Samuel's code, Cole reported. Mississippi Corridor. 2 potential rural properties. One was active as recently as last month. Grace stood again. I'm coming. Cole shook his head. I cannot permit that. He is my father. Maya rose carefully, a sharp pain flaring in her ribs. Miss Okoro, please listen to me. If your father is there, the safest course of action for him is for you to remain accessible. Keep your phone on. Answer every call. When we have news, you will be the first to know. Grace appeared to want to protest. Then her eyes settled on Samuel's photograph in Maya's hand. You bring him back, she said. Maya carefully placed the photo inside her evidence folder, holding it close to her chest. We are investigating where they told you not to look. Grace escorted them to the door. As Maya stepped onto the porch, the wind chimes stirred once more, emitting a soft, delicate sound in the afternoon air. Behind her, Grace called out, Agent Williams. Maya turned. My father is not a case number. Maya clutched her bandage. No, she replied. He never was. Ruth Bennett contacted Maya Williams at 9:18 that evening. Maya was in the passenger seat of Raymond Cole's SUV, traveling south on I-75 under a dark Georgia sky. Samuel Okoro's photograph was sealed within an evidence folder resting on her lap. The image of Grace standing in her doorway lingered with Maya longer than the porch light visible in the rearview mirror. Cole's phone buzzed first. He glanced at the caller ID, frowned, and handed it to Maya. Unknown caller, he stated, but it came through the tip line pre-established for court staff. Maya answered, Special Agent Williams. For a few seconds, only the sound of breathing could be heard. Then, an older woman's voice spoke. I know what Black Orchid signifies. Maya straightened. Cole glanced over. Who is this? Maya asked. Another pause. My name is Ruth Bennett. I worked in Judge Whitaker's courtroom for 26 years. Maya recalled seeing her in the back row, the elderly woman with the court folder and the pen that dropped when the badge hit the floor. Mrs. Bennet, where are you? I cannot speak on the phone. Are you safe? I don't know anymore. Maya softened her tone. Tell me where to meet you. Ruth provided the name of an old Baptist church on the outskirts of Savannah, a small establishment off a two-lane road bordered by pine and live oak trees. Without prompting, Cole executed a U-turn at the next exit.
They arrived at New Hope Baptist just after midnight. The church was constructed of white clapboard, its steeple leaning slightly to the left as if years of age had pulled it askew. A solitary yellow light glowed above the side entrance. In the gravel lot sat an older Buick, pale blue, clean but showing rust around the wheel wells. Cole parked the SUV with its headlights off. Do you want me inside? He inquired. Close enough to hear? Maya asked. Do you trust her? No, but I recognize fear when I hear it. Maya stepped out carefully. Her ribs still ached, and the night air, cold and sharp, slipped through the tear in her brown coat. She crossed the gravel and entered through the side door. The sanctuary was filled with the mingled scents of wood polish, old hymnals, and candle wax. Moonlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting patches of blue and red onto the pews. Ruth Bennett sat midway down the center aisle, a cardboard file box on her lap. Her gray hair was neatly pinned, but her hands trembled slightly at the edges of the box. You came, Ruth whispered. You called? Ruth looked past Maya. Is Agent Cole outside? Yes, good. I don't believe I can repeat it. Maya sat in the pew behind her, leaving a space before speaking. Ruth gazed toward the pulpit. I used to sing in this church when I was a girl, she began. My daddy sat right over there every Sunday. He believed a person's name was sacred. He used to say, if you spoke someone's name in prayer, heaven had to know who you meant. She looked down at the box. I spent the last 8 years watching names disappear. Maya remained silent. Ruth opened the box. Inside were folders, yellow legal pads, printed emails, photocopied docket sheets, and a small spiral notebook secured with a rubber band. I told myself I was merely keeping records, Ruth confessed. But deep down, I knew I was preserving ghosts. Maya leaned forward. Why keep them? Ruth let out a small broken laugh. Because I was too cowardly to speak and too guilty to discard them. She handed Maya the first folder. It contained a list of cases marked removed, each with handwritten annotations beside them. Dates, times, initials, vehicle descriptions. Some entries had only a single word scribbled next to them. Basement. Maya turned a page. There it was again. PTR09. Who created this code? Ruth's eyes welled up. Whitaker's Chambers. Officially, it signified Private Transfer Review for Special Removals. But that was a fabrication. It meant no public docket, no standard transport, no family notification until after the individual was gone. Gone where? Ruth reached into the box and withdrew a folded sheet. At first, I believed they were being taken to private detention contractors. Unpleasant, but legally sufficient for people to feign ignorance. Then I observed the vehicles. What vehicles? Black vans, sometimes box trucks, no government markings. They arrived after normal business hours, typically under the loading dock, the same 2 drivers on most occasions. I noted the license plate numbers when I could. Maya took the sheet. 7 license plate numbers were listed, with dates beside each. Ruth's voice dropped. One night, I stayed late because my car battery had died. I witnessed a man I recognized from court being led out through the basement. Samuel Okoro. He was not on a deportation bus. He was not being taken to an airport. He was in handcuffs and he was pleading with them to call his daughter. Maya's hand tightened around the paper. What did he say? Ruth closed her eyes. He said, Please, call Grace. Tell her I did not leave for a moment. The church seemed to hold its breath. Maya carefully placed the paper into her folder. Why didn't you report it? Ruth looked at Maya then, tears falling freely. Because I was terrified. Because I had a pension. Because my grandson had just started college.
Because Whitaker discovered I was making inquiries and told me that individuals my age should be cautious about accidents. Her lips trembled. Because I chose comfort over courage, Agent Williams. There. That is the truth. Maya's expression was still, but not unkind. Silence can be understandable, Mrs. Bennet, but it still leaves its mark. Ruth nodded as if she accepted the sting of those words. Then allow me to use the remaining time I have to make a different kind of mark. She reached into the bottom of the box and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a printed schedule, creased and handled numerous times. This arrived through Chambers 3 days ago. I copied it before Nora Pike secured the file. Maya read it. Private relocation. Friday, 4 a.m. Route 16. Mississippi Transfer Point. Agricultural processing site. Her pulse quickened. This is tomorrow night, Maya stated. Ruth nodded. 18 people, perhaps more. I don't know the final destination, but the initial stop is marked with initials B.O. Black Orchard. Ruth's lips pressed together. I heard Whitaker utter it once, years ago, she confided. He believed no one was in the hallway. He said, Black Orchard pays more for those with no family. Maya stood slowly, the pain momentarily forgotten. She surveyed the box, the elderly woman, the pews bathed in the moonlight filtering through the stained glass. Mrs. Bennet, I need you to come with us. Ruth wiped her face. Will they arrest me? I don't know. Will I deserve it? Maya did not answer immediately. That will be for others to determine. But tonight, you can help us save whoever is still on that truck. Ruth closed the box with both hands. Outside, Cole emerged from the darkness as Maya exited the church door. He saw her face and understood. What do we have? He asked. Maya handed him the schedule. Less than 48 hours, she replied. Cole read it once, then again. This is sufficient cause for action. Behind them, Ruth Bennet stood beneath the church's yellow light, holding the box against her chest as if it were something fragile and sacred. Maya looked toward the dark road beyond the gravel lot. Somewhere out there, a truck was being prepared. Somewhere, individuals who had already been erased once were about to be moved again. This time, Maya intended to be waiting. By dawn, Judge Harold Whitaker no longer possessed his courtroom, his gavel, or the silence he had spent years imposing on others. He sat in a federal interview room in Savannah, his black robe gone, his tie loosened, his hands folded on the metal table as if dignity could be achieved through posture. Without the imposing height of the bench above him, he resembled less a judge and more an elderly man struggling to comprehend that the world had shifted. While he remained in his position of authority, Maya Williams observed him through the observation glass. Raymond Cole stood beside her, holding Ruth Bennet's transfer schedule in one hand and a fresh coffee in the other. He had been awake all night. So had Maya, and so had half the field office. You don't have to go in, Cole stated. Maya kept her eyes fixed on Whitaker. Yes, I do. You're injured. He knows Samuel Okoro. Cole looked at her. Are you sure? When I mentioned Samuel's name in the records room, he barely reacted, Maya replied. When Ruth described him being escorted through the basement, it aligns with the schedule. Whitaker knows where that route leads. Cole took a slow breath. We can leverage Pike. We can leverage Voss. They are clerks and enforcers. Whitaker is the gateway. Inside the room, Whitaker turned his head slightly, as if sensing their gaze. A lawyer in a charcoal suit sat beside him, expensively dressed and unfeeling, whispering advice that Whitaker appeared too proud to acknowledge. Cole opened the door. Maya entered first. Whitaker's eyes moved from her brown coat to her badge, then to the faint bruise visible near her wrist. His mouth twitched with something akin to disgust, but not quite. Disgust would have been honest. What he displayed was resentment. "Agent Williams," Whitaker's attorney interjected, "my client will not answer questions without counsel present." Maya sat opposite Whitaker. "Counsel is present," she stated. The lawyer stiffened. "Then allow me to be explicit. Judge Whitaker denies all allegations concerning coercion, unlawful transfer, and any supposed trafficking conspiracy. Your undercover operation was entrapment," Whitaker leaned back. "A performance," he added. "That is all it was. A minor spectacle orchestrated by a woman seeking headlines." Maya placed Ruth's copy transfer sheet on the table, not yet sliding it towards him. "No headlines," she said, "just names." Whitaker glanced at the paper, then looked away too quickly. Cole stood near the wall, arms crossed. "Private relocation. Friday, 4 a.m. Road 16, Mississippi, transfer point. Agricultural processing site. Do you recognize that?" The attorney reached for the sheet. "We have not been provided with proper discovery." Cole pulled it back. "You will receive discovery when the U.S. attorney determines it is appropriate." Whitaker smiled thinly. "You people always believe paperwork proves something." Maya tilted her head. "You people." His smile faded. She opened the folder and removed the photograph of Samuel Okoro. Not the sterile intake photo from the court file, but the cookout picture Grace had given her. Samuel smiling in an apron, one hand raised, signaling the photographer to wait. Maya placed it on the table. Whitaker did not touch it. "Samuel Okoro," Maya stated. "Lawful resident, garage mechanic, father, church member. He appeared in your courtroom 2 years ago. 4 minutes later, you marked him removed. No flight record, no arrival confirmation, no receiving authority." Whitaker stared at her. "I handled thousands of cases. This one required you to call his daughter." A muscle twitched in Whitaker's jaw. Maya noticed it. The attorney intervened. "Agent Williams, this is speculative." Maya placed another document beside the photo. Ruth Bennett saw him in the basement after hours. She recorded the license plate of the vehicle that transported him. Whitaker's eyes snapped up. "Ruth Bennett is a confused elderly woman attempting to save herself." "Perhaps," Maya conceded, "but she maintained better records than your court." Cole almost smiled. Whitaker leaned forward. "Do you understand your fundamental flaw, Agent Williams? You believe that because you endured minor humiliation, you comprehend the intricate workings of government?" Maya did not flinch. "No, I believe that because you subjected people to humiliation for years, you forgot that machines leave indelible marks." His attorney placed a hand on Whitaker's sleeve. "Judge, please." Whitaker ignored him. "You entered my courtroom feigning helplessness, and now you seek accolades for surviving a situation you yourself orchestrated." Maya's voice remained calm. "The individuals you sent through that basement did not create it." Whitaker looked at Samuel's photo again, and this time there was no mistaking it. Recognition, irritation, a memory he wished he had buried deeper. Maya placed more photos on the table. Grace, a Joe Amensa, Patrick Bell, Miriam Baptiste. Names linked to PTR09 codes, families, letters, unanswered calls. "You labeled them lost cases," Maya stated. Whitaker's face hardened. The lawyer turned sharply towards him. "Judge." Maya leaned in. "That is what you said, isn't it? Lost cases. Individuals with no one sufficiently influential to persist in their inquiries." Whitaker's nostrils flared. "You have no comprehension of what this country must manage." "There it is," Maya said softly. His attorney spoke rapidly. My client is finished answering. But Whitaker was no longer listening. Rage had achieved what pressure could not. You imagine every file represents a person? He snapped. You believe every sob story warrants a courtroom? The system would collapse if we afforded each one the importance it deserves. Maya felt Cole shift behind her. The room seemed to constrict. And Black Orchard compensated you for deciding which ones did not matter? Whitaker froze. The attorney stood. This interview is concluded. Cole stepped forward. Sit down. The attorney did not comply. I said this interview. The door opened before he could finish. Agent Lewis entered, phone in hand, his expression tense. Cole, we have movement. One of the plates from Ruth's list registered on a traffic camera outside Modesto 40 minutes ago. Box truck heading west. Maya stood. Whitaker's eyes shifted. For a fleeting instant, satisfaction appeared on his face. Not fear, but satisfaction. Maya turned back toward him. Where are they heading? The attorney questioned. Don't respond to that. Whitaker offered Maya a small, venomous smile. You're too late. Maya placed both hands on the table, leaning in close enough for him to hear her every word. No, she stated. You are. She then gathered Samuel's photograph and departed with Cole. In the hallway, agents were already in motion. Phones rang, printers whirred to life, and a map displaying Georgia and Mississippi illuminated the command room screen. Routes were highlighted in red, yellow, and blue. Cole looked at Maya. First location, Mississippi transfer point, she declared. Now, he acknowledged with a nod. Strike team deploys in 10 minutes. Maya glanced down at the smiling visage of Samuel in the photograph. Grace had entrusted it to her. Ruth had finally shared her truth. Elena had stood firm. These names were no longer mere specters, but somewhere on a desolate road, 18 living souls were being transported by men who believed the night was still theirs to command. Maya carefully folded the photo into her vest pocket. Not this time. The initial Mississippi property lay 30 meters off the interstate, concealed by a private drive winding through pine forests and low-lying fields that shimmered silver in the dawn light. By the time the FBI convoy reached the outer perimeter, the sky was beginning to lighten. A dense fog clung close to the ground, drifting in slow, ethereal sheets across the gravel path, past rusted fence posts and a ditch choked with weeds. A hand-painted sign, Claiborne Agricultural Supply, hung from a chain-link gate. The lettering was faded, but the lock on the gate was new. Maya Williams emerged from the armored SUV, Samuel Okoro's photograph tucked safely in her vest pocket, a dull ache still radiating along her ribs. She wore a ballistic vest over the familiar brown coat. Raymond Cole had objected to that coat for the third time before they left Savannah, but Maya had remained silent, simply putting it on. The coat had once served as a disguise in Whitaker's courtroom. Now it felt like a silent testament. Cole circled around the front of the vehicle, his rifle lowered but at the ready. You stay behind cover until we secure the main building. Maya surveyed the dark farmhouse beyond the gate. If Samuel is in there, he might recognize my face from the news. If Samuel is in there, he'll recognize the FBI vest. Maya offered no argument. She understood Cole's apprehension. She also knew that fear on its own had never saved anyone. The breach team moved with swift efficiency. The gate lock yielded to the cutter's bite. Agents advanced in 2 columns, their boots crunching on the gravel, weapons aimed low. A state trooper positioned himself to block the road behind them. Another team fanned out towards the barn and storage sheds. Federal agents, Cole's voice boomed. Search warrant. The farmhouse door gave way with a resounding crack. No shots followed. That was the first ominous sign. Maya waited 3 seconds, then 5, before following Cole across the yard. The scent assailed her before she reached the porch. Damp wood, stale sweat, diesel fuel, and bleach applied too late. Inside, the farmhouse was ransacked. Mattresses lay scattered on the floor in 2 rooms, thin and stained. Metal bowls were stacked near a sink. A trash bag overflowing with clothing had been abandoned by the back door. On the kitchen table, agents discovered a laptop, its edges still warm from recent use. Cole touched the casing with a gloved hand, then gestured toward the hallway. They knew we were coming. Agent Lewis entered from the rear. Barn is empty. Storage shed contains restraints, medical waste, and food containers. No victims.
Maya moved deliberately through the front room. Each item seemed to whisper a story, a testament to its owner's forced silence. A child's red hair tie, a pair of cracked reading glasses, a shoe with a worn-down heel, a church bulletin from Atlanta dated 2 years prior. She carefully picked up the bulletin with gloved fingers. On the cover was a simple depiction of a small black church, complete with brick steps and a white steeple. Someone had circled the words, "Sunday Fellowship Dinner," in blue ink. Cole observed her. "Maya," he prompted. She placed it in an evidence bag. Someone carried this here because it represented home. An agent called from outside. "We've got markings in the rear structure." Maya and Cole crossed the yard to a long cinder block building situated behind the barn. The door had been secured with a padlock from the exterior. Inside, the air was noticeably colder than the morning air outside. Rows of metal bed frames lined the walls, devoid of mattresses, their bare frames stark against the concrete floor. Scratches marred the floor, evidence of something heavy being dragged away in haste. At the far end of the room, Agent Lewis stood facing the wall. "Maya," he said quietly. She walked towards him. The wall was a canvas of names, some etched with nails, others scrawled in charcoal, and some carved deeply enough to resist paint, bleach, and whatever efforts men like Whitaker believed could obliterate a life. A.A., Patrick, Miriam, Jill, Tasha, Emmanuel, Ruthie, Kofi, Leon. Maya's throat tightened. Then she saw it. Samuel O. "Tell Grace." I tried. For a fleeting moment, the building ceased to exist. She envisioned Grace's kitchen table, the cookie tin filled with unanswered letters, the photograph of Samuel in his cookout apron, the words scrawled on the back, "So you remember, I always come home." Maya reached out towards the wall, her fingers hovering inches away. "Photograph everything," she instructed, her voice barely a whisper. "Every name, every mark, every inch." Louis nodded, his own voice now rough with emotion. "Yes, ma'am." Cole removed his cap and stood beside her, offering silent support. There were places where silence wasn't weakness, but profound respect. Maya stared at the words again. "Tell Grace I tried." Not tell Grace I gave up. Not tell Grace I disappeared. Not tell Grace I left. Simply, I tried. Cole's radio crackled. "Command, we found fresh tire tracks behind the loading shed. Heavy vehicle. Appears to be a box truck. Mud is still wet." Cole responded. "Copy. Photograph and cast if possible. Track direction." Another voice joined the transmission. "Also found an ash pile. Papers burned recently. Still warm underneath." Maya turned from the wall. "How long ago?" Louis checked the message from the field team. "Approximately 4 to 6 hours." Cole's jaw tightened. Whitaker's people moved them before sunrise. Maya stepped outside quickly, the sharp movement sending a jolt of pain through her side. She ignored it. Behind the shed, the ground was soft. Deep tire impressions curved towards a service road leading west. One agent knelt over the tracks, while another bagged fragments of half-burned paper. Maya crouched beside the ash pile. A blackened corner of a page had survived. Priya's team had printed enough coded data for Maya to immediately recognize the pattern. PTR null name, followed by what appeared to be a route notation. M line mill mills site. Maya looked up. Cole stated, "They're heading towards the Mississippi-Alabama line." He was already on the radio. "All units, update search grid. We have a possible mill site near the state line. Cross-reference abandoned lumber operations, private agricultural holdings, and any properties linked to shell companies from Black Orchard." Maya glanced back at the cinder block building. The names on the wall seemed to watch her through the open doorway. "We need to call Grace," Cole suggested. Maya shook her head once. "Not with only this. She deserves to know. She deserves the truth, not another wound dressed up as hope." Cole studied her face. "What do we tell her?" Maya pulled out her phone. "That we found proof he was alive after the court declared him gone?" Grace answered on the second ring. "Agent Williams?" Maya closed her eyes briefly, then reopened them. "Grace, we found a place where your father was held." A small sound came through the phone, not a word, but a breaking breath. "Was he?" Grace managed to ask. "We found something he wrote," Maya replied. Silence followed. Maya's voice softened. "He wrote, 'Tell Grace I tried.'" Grace began to cry, but there was a burgeoning strength within her tears, old grief mingling with terrible, undeniable proof. "He was alive," Grace stated. "Yes. Is he still?" Maya looked toward the tire tracks disappearing into the fog. "We are still looking." Grace inhaled shakily. "Then don't stop." Maya looked at the torn sleeve of her brown coat at her wrist, at the mud on her boots, at the road where the truck had vanished. "I won't." She ended the call and turned to Cole. "Find me that mill." Cole nodded to the agents who were already mobilizing around them. "We're on it." The sun climbed higher over the pines, casting a pale golden light upon the abandoned property. To any passerby on the distant highway, it would have appeared as just another forgotten farm, another failed business, another quiet place swallowed by the passage of time. But Maya now knew better. This place had not been forgotten. It had been utilized. And somewhere ahead, the individuals whose names were etched into that wall were still awaiting rescue before it was too late. Priya located the mill at 7:43 that morning. It initially surfaced as a property record buried beneath 3 shell corporations, then as a satellite image of a long, roofed structure hidden beyond the swathe of pine forest near the Mississippi-Alabama border. On paper, it was derelict. Tax filings indicated it hadn't operated for 9 years. Utility records, however, told a different story. Power had been restored 3 months prior. Diesel deliveries had resumed 6 weeks ago. A private road had been graded the previous Tuesday. And at 6:58 that morning, a traffic camera captured the same box truck from Ruth Bennett's list turning onto that road. Maya Williams stood over the map spread on the hood of Cole's SUV, mud still clinging to her boots from the earlier property. The sun had risen, but the air remained chillingly cold. Agents moved with quiet urgency, checking radios, loading rescue equipment, and coordinating with state police. Raymond Cole pointed to the satellite image. "Main building here, loading dock on the west side, 2 outbuildings, 3 cover on 3 sides, 1 access road." "Any cameras?" Maya inquired. "Likely. Priya is attempting to disable anything connected to a network, but we assume they have local feeds." "How many inside?" "Unknown." Maya gazed at the road leading to the mill. Victims. Cole's face tightened. At least 18, possibly more. She reached into her vest pocket, her fingers brushing against Samuel Okoro's photograph. Then we move, now. Cole studied her. You are not leading entry with those ribs. I'm not asking. I'm not debating. Maya met his gaze. They saw me on the news. If any of them saw the courtroom footage, they'll know I was almost sent through the same pipeline. Some of them may not trust armed men shouting federal commands. They need a face. Cole looked away towards the line of pines, then back at her. You will remain behind the breach team until the structure is secure enough for victim contact.
That is not a request. Maya nodded once. Understood. By 8:26, the convoy advanced without the wail of sirens. The mill stood at the terminus of a red dirt track, partially obscured by trees. Its front sign was split down the middle, the letters barely discernible. Hartwell Timber Processing. The front windows were boarded up, and the fence was patched with new wire. Smoke curled from a pipe behind the main building. From a distance, it appeared derelict, but it was far from it. The first team cut through the side fence, while the second secured the access road. Drones ascended above the trees. A state police unit intercepted a pickup truck attempting to exit via a service trail. 2 men inside were apprehended and secured before they could radio a warning. Then, a voice crackled in Cole's earpiece. Movement inside, west loading area. Multiple heat signatures, some stationary, some moving rapidly. Cole raised his hand. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then he dropped it. FBI search warrant. The breach charge detonated against the side door. Agents surged inward. Maya followed behind Cole, her heart steady, the pain momentarily forgotten in the intensity of the moment. Inside, the mill was dim and filled with a cacophony of noise. Old machinery lined the walls, some of it running just enough to mask other sounds. The air reeked of sawdust, oil, sweat, and fear. Shouts echoed from deeper within the building. One individual attempted to flee down a rear corridor, but was tackled by an agent before reaching the exit. Another dropped a stack of papers into a burn barrel, but Lewis kicked the barrel over before the flames could take hold. "Hands! Show me your hands!" agents commanded. Maya moved past a stack of lumber and saw the first group of victims behind a chain-link partition. Men and women stood crammed together, gaunt, exhausted, and terrified. Some raised their hands, believing they were being arrested. Others recoiled as if any uniform signified another transfer. One woman cried out, "Please, please, we didn't do anything." Maya stepped forward, lowering her weapon completely and raising her empty hand. "My name is Maya Williams," she called out. "I'm with the FBI." They stared at her. She pulled her badge free and held it up, the same badge that had fallen onto the courtroom floor. "I was in Whitaker's courtroom. He tried to send me here too. Listen to me carefully. No one is selling you today. No one is moving you again. You are going home." For a moment, no one moved. Then an elderly woman sank to her knees, her body racked with sobs. A young man whispered, "Home." Maya nodded. Yes, home. Agents cut the lock on the partition. Medical staff entered, carrying blankets and water. Cole moved past Maya, following shouted updates from the second team toward the rear of the building. "Additional holding area, east side." Maya heard it and followed. The east side of the mill was darker. A series of small rooms had been constructed within what had previously been a storage wing. Doors opened one by one. Some rooms were empty. Others contained clothing, bedding, and personal items collected in plastic bins. Then, from the last room, an agent called out, "We need medical here." Maya stepped into the doorway. An older black man sat on a wooden crate near the wall. One arm was wrapped around himself, his face hollowed by exhaustion. His beard had turned mostly gray. His shirt hung loosely from his shoulders, but his eyes, when they lifted, were still sharp enough to search a stranger's face for truth. Maya recognized him before she checked the file tag taped to the bin beside him. Samuel Okoro. She crouched slowly, careful not to tower over him. Mr. Okoro. His eyes shifted to her badge. Are you real? Yes, sir. He swallowed. They said no one was coming. Maya took the photograph from her vest pocket and held it out. His hand trembled as he accepted it. He gazed at the cookout apron, the backyard, the younger version of himself smiling in the sunlight. A sound escaped him then, not quite a sob, not quite a laugh, something deeper. Grace, he whispered. She never stopped looking for you. His eyes filled. My daughter. Maya turned and called out, Cole, I need a secure video line, now. Within minutes, an agent handed her a phone. Grace answered so quickly that the image on the screen momentarily blurred. At first, she was standing in her kitchen, one hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope. Maya held the phone toward Samuel. For a single second, father and daughter simply stared at each other. Then Grace broke. Daddy. Samuel clutched the phone with both hands. Gracie. She began to cry so intensely that she could barely speak. I knew you didn't leave. I knew it. Samuel bowed his head over the phone. I tried to come home. I know, she choked out. I saw the wall. I know. Maya stepped away, turning her back to give them the dignity of their reunion in a room full of agents. Cole appeared beside her, his voice low. We have 32 victims on site, 12 suspects detained, documents, devices, transport logs. This is it. Maya looked through the doorway at Samuel, speaking to his daughter, at the blanket being draped around the elderly woman from the holding area, at a young man drinking water, his hands shaking around the cup. No, she said softly. This is them outside. The rescued were led into the morning light. Some shielded their eyes, some cried as the sun touched their faces. One small boy, no older than 9, stood beside a medic and stared at Maya's badge. Are we in trouble? He asked. Maya crouched, despite the persistent pain in her side. No, sweetheart, she said. Trouble is what we came to end. The boy nodded, as if considering whether the world could be trusted again. Behind them, the mill doors stood ajar, spilling darkness into the daylight. For years, men like Whitaker had believed such places were beyond the reach of law, beyond the reach of family, beyond the reach of any divine intervention. But that morning, names had replaced numbers, faces had replaced files, and every person led out of Hartwell Timber Processing carried the undeniable proof that the erased had not vanished. They had been waiting. By sunset, the story had rippled across America. Initially, it was just a courthouse rumor emanating from Savannah. A federal judge removed from his own courtroom after humiliating a black woman he had mistaken for an undocumented immigrant. Then came the shaky, brief clip from a witness's phone, but it was impossible to misunderstand. Judge Harold Whitaker's voice blared from millions of screens. Get the hell back to Africa and sue there. The camera then captured the moment Maya Williams' FBI badge clattered onto the floor. But by nightfall, the narrative had expanded far beyond one hateful sentence. It was about the mill. It was about the 32 individuals led out of Hartwell Timber Processing, swaddled in emergency blankets. It was about Samuel Okoro weeping into a phone while his daughter Grace sobbed on the other end. It was about a wall covered in names. It was about government files falsely claiming people had been deported when in reality they had been sold. Maya Williams watched the initial press conference from the rear of a federal operations room in Atlanta. She stood with her arms folded, the old brown coat draped over a chair beside her.
Her ribs were taped now. A doctor had finally persuaded her to rest long enough to confirm nothing was broken, though he had looked at her with that tired, fatherly gaze and said, "Pain can still tell the truth, Agent Williams. Listen to it." She had nodded and then returned to work. On the screen, the U.S. attorneys stepped to the podium. Behind him stood FBI officials, civil rights investigators, and state law enforcement personnel. Raymond Cole stood to one side, his expression grave, hands folded in front of him. The U.S. attorney did not mince words. "Today," he stated, "our office is announcing federal charges against Harold Whitaker, formerly a United States immigration judge, and multiple co-conspirators connected to a trafficking and forced labor network operating under the false guise of immigration removal proceedings." A gasp arose from the press pool. The U.S. attorney continued, "The charges include conspiracy to commit human trafficking, forced labor, unlawful detention, obstruction of justice, falsification and destruction of federal records, money laundering through encrypted digital marketplaces, and conspiracy to deprive individuals of their civil rights under color of law." Maya looked down at the floor. Under color of law. That phrase carried a particularly heavy burden of shame. It signified that the law itself had been weaponized, used as a deceptive cloak. Agent Lewis stood beside her, holding a tablet. "They've frozen 3 of Whitaker's accounts, 2 properties, 1 trust tied to his wife's brother. Crypto wallets are being traced." "Good," Maya replied. "Pike is cooperating." Maya looked over. Lewis nodded. "Nora Pike. She provided transport names, payment channels, and 2 court employees we didn't have yet. Says Whitaker told her the individuals moved through PTR 09 were already officially gone." Maya's jaw tightened. That made it easier for her. "She says she was afraid." Maya turned back to the screen. "Fear explains a lot. It doesn't cleanse anything." Across town, in a secure medical facility, the rescued survivors were undergoing examinations, receiving meals, and being interviewed only when they felt ready, connecting with advocates. The FBI had quickly learned that rescue was not the conclusion of captivity. Some victims still flinched when doors opened. Some refused to believe they would not be charged. Some requested work, believing freedom had to be immediately earned. Samuel Okoro had asked for grace. By evening, the FBI granted her permission to see him. Maya did not attend the reunion. She watched from behind a glass panel at the medical center, affording them their privacy. Grace entered the room, both hands pressed to her mouth. Samuel rose too quickly from his chair, stumbled, then caught himself on the table. Grace traversed the space in 3 swift strides. As father and daughter embraced, words seemed to elude both of them. Grace repeatedly caressed his face, his shoulders, his hands, as if to confirm that the world had returned him whole. Samuel closed his eyes and uttered something inaudible to Maya. Raymond Cole approached and stood beside her. "Are you all right?" Maya observed Grace clinging to her father. "I'm unsure what that signifies at this juncture." Cole accepted her statement. On a television screen mounted in a corner, reporters were dissecting Whitaker's downfall. They displayed an older official portrait of him in his judicial robes, a smile gracing his lips with the carefully cultivated dignity of a man confident that history would remember him favorably. This was followed by footage of him being escorted into federal custody, shorn of his robe, without the esteemed bench, and without anyone rising as he entered. The disparity was stark and unforgiving. Maya's expression remained unsmiling. Cole took note. For most, a sense of satisfaction would prevail. "I feel exhausted," Maya confessed. "That counts for something. I can't stop thinking about those we haven't located yet." Cole's demeanor softened. "We found 32 alive. We have documentation for additional locations. We have Black Orchard's financial records. This investigation isn't concluding tonight." "Good.
The following morning, the initial formal proceedings commenced in federal court. Whitaker appeared in a plain dark suit, his hands manacled at his waist, his face contorted with barely suppressed fury. His legal counsel argued for his release pending trial, citing his advanced age, established reputation, prior public service, and minimal risk of flight. The prosecuting attorney stepped forward and meticulously detailed the evidence uncovered: clandestine transfer codes, erased court records, witness testimonies, recovered marketplace data, survivors from the mill, Ruth Bennett's meticulously kept files, Nora Pike's essential cooperation, and a clandestine audio recording of Whitaker explicitly instructing Maya to access a private communication channel. He then played a single sentence from the courtroom audio. "Your file is gone," Whitaker's voice stated, chillingly clear. "And soon, so are you." The judge presiding over the hearing was an older black woman, identified as Judge Althea Freeman. She listened intently, her expression unreadable. As the audio concluded, she removed her spectacles. Mr. Whitaker spent years determining whether other human beings were permitted to remain at liberty, she declared. Today, she continued, this court finds that he poses both a flight risk and a danger to the community. The gavel fell and detention was granted. For the first time, Harold Whitaker lowered his gaze. Later, in the hallway, Elena Morales located Maya standing near a vending machine. Elena appeared utterly drained, yet a determined fire burned in her eyes. "They're reopening the case files," she announced. "Every PTR09 case, every complaint about a missing file, every removal order signed under Whitaker's private review system." Maya nodded. "Excellent." Elena held up a manila folder. "I'm joining the review team." "I had a feeling you might," Maya responded. Elena offered a faint, melancholic smile. "A missing file isn't merely paperwork when a human being vanishes along with it." Maya met her gaze. "Repeat that when the cameras are rolling." "I fully intend to." Later that week, Ruth Bennett gave her testimony before a grand jury. She entered leaning on a cane, dressed in a navy suit and carrying the same cardboard box she had brought to the church. Her voice initially quivered, but soon found its strength. She provided names, dates, license plate numbers, and codes. She openly acknowledged her fear. She admitted to her silence. She did not seek to be absolved of either. Upon her conclusion, Maya assisted her into the hallway. Ruth looked at Maya with a hopeful tremor. Would it be enough? Maya considered the wall at the first property, Samuel's message, Grace's kitchen, and the boy at the mill who had anxiously inquired if he was in trouble. "No," Maya replied, "but it will be a significant part of a larger enough." By the week's end, Whitaker's pension had been suspended, his assets frozen, his chambers cleared out, his portrait removed from the courthouse wall, and his name erased from the Judicial Conference plaque in Savannah. The black robe that had once inspired dread now lay in an evidence locker, tagged and sealed. The system he had wielded as a weapon was now slowly and imperfectly beginning to turn back toward the very people it had wronged. Maya stood outside the courthouse one evening, observing workers meticulously removing the old brass nameplate from Whitaker's courtroom door. Cole appeared beside her, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. He handed one to her. "Justice?" he inquired. Maya gazed at the empty space where Whitaker's name had once been. "Not yet," she replied, "but it's no longer buried." 3 months later, the first reunion was convened in a brick community center located on Atlanta's west side, not far from the church where Samuel Okoro had once referred to his daughter. Every Sunday, folding tables draped with white cloths were laden with paper cups of street tea, platters of fried chicken, green beans, cornbread, pound cake, and peach pie, all contributed by church ladies who refused to let grief settle in a room without offering sustenance.
A choir from a nearby Baptist church stood by the small stage, humming softly, not yet singing, as attendees found their seats. Older gentlemen entered, attired in well-pressed suits from more prosperous times. Women embraced each other with a full, encompassing hug. Children darted about too rapidly until their mothers gently grasped their shoulders, reminding them that this was not a playground. Even as joy occasionally forgot its decorum, Maya Williams stood near the back wall, away from the cameras. She wore a dark navy suit, simple shoes, and her FBI badge was clipped to her waist. The familiar old brown coat was no longer draped over her shoulders. It was securely stored in evidence, tagged with a case number, still bearing its torn lining, the coffee stain, and the legacy of a woman Judge Harold Whittaker had believed he could utterly humiliate into silence. Raymond Cole approached her side, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "You know," he said, extending one to her, "they're calling it the badge that broke the market." Maya accepted the cup. "It wasn't the badge," she countered. Cole glanced across the room. "No." She watched as a rescued woman spotted her younger brother near the entrance and collapsed into his arms. It was their names. Cole offered no response. He simply nodded, for after so many years on the force, he understood when a statement required no further elaboration. The room was replete with names. Now, a Joanna sat with 3 grandchildren she had never met. Patrick Bell held his wife's hand as if he feared sleep might reclaim her. Miriam Baptiste alternated between laughter and tears as her sister adjusted the scarf around her shoulders. Individuals who had once been classified as field units, labor transfers, and closed files now sat beneath the bright fluorescent lights, partaking in warm food from paper plates, while volunteers inquired if they required additional napkins. No one referred to them as inventory. No one called them removed. No one declared them gone. Near the front of the room, Grace Socorro stood beside her father. Samuel appeared thinner than he had in the photograph from the cookout. His beard was visibly wider. His hands trembled slightly as he held his cup, but he was standing. Grace had one arm looped through his, as though she had resolved never again to permit the world to create distance between them without a resolute struggle. When Samuel noticed Maya, he whispered something to Grace, and then they walked toward her together. Maya straightened instinctively. "Agent Williams," Samuel said. "Mr. Okoro," Maya replied, offering a faint smile. "Samuel, please. After all you've endured, you can call me Samuel." Grace's eyes were already glistening. "He wanted to thank you before everyone begins making speeches." Maya shook her head. "You don't need to thank me." Samuel reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew the photograph Grace had given Maya, the one of him wearing the King of the Cookout apron. It had been returned to him after its examination. Its edges had softened with time. "They told me I was already gone," he stated. Maya looked from the photograph to him. "You weren't." "No," Samuel affirmed. His voice trembled but did not break. "I was remembered." Grace pressed her lips together, attempting to suppress fresh tears and failing. Samuel held the photograph against his chest. "In that place," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, "I used to speak my daughter's name every morning. Grace, Grace, Grace. Some men counted the days. I counted her name. I thought if I kept saying it, perhaps God would know where to send me back." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. "He knew," Grace whispered. Samuel looked at Maya, and he sent people who listened. Maya lowered her eyes for a brief moment. She had been lauded as brave on television, hailed as heroic in newspapers, and described as historic by individuals who favored grand pronouncements after the peril had subsided. But this one father, standing before her with his daughter by his side, felt weightier than all of it combined. "I'm so glad you came home," she said. Samuel reached out and took her hand in both of his.
His grip was weak, yet warm. "You brought more than just me home," he said. "You brought back the truth." Across the room, Elena Morales stepped onto the small stage. She had indeed joined the Federal Review team, precisely as she had stated. The reopening of the PTR09 cases had already resulted in more families being contacted, additional properties being searched, and arrests being made in 3 different states. The work was far from complete. Maya understood it might not be finished for years. True justice, genuine justice, did not move with the swiftness of lightning. It progressed more akin to elderly hands carefully sifting through old letters at a kitchen table, slowly, meticulously, and with an unwavering refusal to discard what held value. Elena tapped the microphone. "We are not here today because the system functioned as intended," she stated. "We are here because individuals refuse to allow the system's failure to be the definitive conclusion." The room fell silent. Elena's gaze shifted toward Ruth Bennett, seated in the front row with her cane resting across her lap. Ruth appeared smaller than she had in the church, but also lighter, as if her confession had not erased the past, but had finally lifted its oppressive weight from her chest. She nodded once as Elena expressed gratitude to those who had come forward, however belatedly, and had chosen truth over personal comfort. Maya watched Ruth wipe a tear from her eye. Then Elena uttered the sentence that would later be disseminated in newspapers across the nation. "A missing file is not paperwork when a human being disappears with it." Applause began, initially subdued, then swelling in volume and depth until the entire room seemed to exhale as one. Following the speeches, families gathered for photographs, not the formal kind with flags and podiums, but the intimate snapshots people often display on their refrigerators or include in church bulletins. Samuel and Grace stood together, his arm around her shoulders, reminiscent of an old graduation picture. This time, Maya stood in the background, partially outside the frame. A young black girl in a yellow dress noticed her badge. She tugged her mother's sleeve and whispered loudly, "Mama, is she the lady who saved everybody?" The mother looked at Maya, her eyes shining. "No, baby," she said softly. "She's the lady who reminded the world they were people." Maya turned toward the window before anyone could discern too much emotion on her face. Outside, the evening light settled over Atlanta in hues of gold and blue. Cars passed on the street. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling. Somewhere, a church bell chimed. Ordinary sounds, sacred sounds. After the profound silence that had ensued, Cole joined her at the window. "You all right?" he asked. Maya took a slow, deep breath. "I'm getting there." He gestured toward the families behind them. "Not a bad place to aim for." "No," she agreed, "not bad at all." Later, as the room began to empty, Maya stepped outside alone for a moment. The air was warm, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and food from the community center kitchen. She stood beneath the porch light and recalled Whitaker's courtroom, the coffee spilling onto the floor, the gavel striking the wood, the searing pain in her ribs, the way his voice had boomed, confident that his authority meant no one could challenge him. Then she thought of the sound that had followed, the badge hitting the floor. At the time, everyone had assumed it was the sound of Maya Williams revealing her true identity. But now, she understood it differently. It was the sound of a falsehood beginning to crack. It was the sound of names emerging from files that had attempted to bury them. It was the sound of a room finally acknowledging what it had ignored for far too long. Maya looked back through the window at Samuel and Grace, laughing together over a paper plate of peach pie. Sometimes, justice did not arrive with a thunderous roar. Sometimes, it entered quietly, clad in an old brown coat. Sometimes, it allowed cruelty to speak first. And sometimes, when a room had been silent for an extended period, justice simply fell to the floor, ensuring everyone could hear it. The core message of this narrative is that justice must never be contingent upon an individual's skin color, accent, documentation, financial status, or social standing. Maya Williams serves as a reminder that malevolence frequently conceals itself behind official titles, eloquent rhetoric, and influential institutions. However, truth possesses an inherent resilience, persisting even when deliberately obscured. The story underscores the inherent value of every human being, each possessing a name, a family, a history, and an inalienable right to be acknowledged. True valor is not always demonstrative. At times, it manifests as quiet fortitude in the face of oppression, maintaining one's dignity and steadfastly refusing to allow the overlooked to remain invisible. Thank you for accompanying this narrative to its conclusion. If its essence resonated with you, I would be deeply appreciative of your reflections on the storytelling, the emotional rhythm, or any aspect that lingered with you after listening. Every comment you share contributes to crafting subsequent narratives that are more authentic, evocative, and meaningful. Furthermore, if you possess a powerful or significant personal story, please do not hesitate to share it with the channel. It may well become the next narrative to inspire and move countless others. This video is a fictional creation developed with the aid of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and circumstances are imaginary and do not represent any real individuals or actual occurrences. The content is intended for narrative purposes and emotional illustration.